the Smith & Wesson Model 351c. Let's check it out. Guys, when it comes to firearms, 22 long rifle and 22 Magnum are extremely popular, and one of the big reasons is just the mild recoil. I mean, they're a lot of fun to take out to the range, hardly any muzzle flip. I mean, you can get some very lightweight firearms, and a lot of people just tend to like that for self-defense. While it's a marginal self-defense round, at best, the 22 Magnum kind of bumps it up just a little bit. Plus, they're very inexpensive to feed. I mean, 22 long rifle is very inexpensive. 22 Magnum, though, kind of starts to get up there near your centerfire calibers. But again, super low recoil. Today we're going to take a look at the Smith & Wesson Model 351c. Now, I did a review of the 351 PD, which is a double single action, but this has the internal hammer, and it's based on the Centennial design of the Smith & Wesson. And the quality of Smith & Wesson is just excellent. So I went by one of my local gun shops and I found this little 351c. Guys, after shooting the 351 PD, I was in love. These are a lot of fun to shoot. Guys, when it comes to revolvers, Smith & Wesson's hard to beat. They just make good quality revolvers, and semi-automatics for that matter. They've been around for a long time, so they should. But this is the AirLite. It's the Model 351c. They do make a 351 PD, which we did a review on, and a buddy of mine let me borrow it, and after borrowing it, I really wanted one. These are super lightweight, 11.4 ounces according to my scale, and there's no way to really tell it until you pick it up because it's just so handy. To me, this is an excellent pocket gun. A lot of people aren't going to necessarily want to carry 22 Magnum, but it is a decent self-defense round with the right loads. And they are now making some self-defense loads, and we'll talk a little bit about that later. But this has an aluminum frame, an aluminum cylinder, and the aluminum barrel shroud. So all the steel parts is stainless steel barrel. It's 1.875 inches in length, so it's a fairly short barrel, but that just makes it very compact. Now the crown is deep and it's scalloped, and so I think that's a really nice feature. And that's going to keep from any kind of nick or burr to get on here to mess up your accuracy. We have a stainless steel cylinder release, and we also have a stainless steel ejection rod, but the entire cylinder is aluminum, which is kind of unique. And of course there are other parts in here that are steel. And right here on the barrel is 22 MRF, which means 22 Magnum Rim Fire. A little bit different than the WMR, which is Winchester Magnum Rim Fire. Then we have the Smith & Wesson logo, and then we have Smith & Wesson. Now this has an internal hammer, a little bit different than the PD model, which has an external hammer. So this means this is double action only, and so when you pull the trigger, you can't cock the hammer. Very much like the Model 442, which is a 38 Special, but it does have the steel cylinder and the steel barrel. So that makes the 351c and the 351 PD the lightest weight revolvers in Smith & Wesson's line. The weight on the 351c, 11.4 ounces. The weight on the Model 442, 38 Special, 15.6 ounces. And that's why they call it the AirLite. And it's also a 7-shot revolver. Now you'll notice these lines right here. It's a little bit of a groove here, also right here under the shroud, right here under the trigger guard, and even at the top, even though this is traditionally a groove or a trough right here with the sights. And this is just to relieve even more weight, even though aluminum is pretty lightweight, is to get all the weight down as possible. the sights are a U-notch in the back and an excess sight, big dot sight on the front. But with this roll pin, I'm sure that these can be replaced if you want to put on night sights or something else. And you'll notice there's no internal lock present on the frame, or what a lot of people call the Hillary hole, and that's going to please a lot of people. And personally, I don't like that lock on there anyway. I mean, it gives you another point that can go wrong. And really, with this trigger pull, you're pretty safe already. Now, the trigger pull on here to me is the one downside of this firearm. But the reason they make the trigger pull so heavy is because it just allows for ignition of the firearm. And there are kits out there where you can change this, but I don't know that you want to change it too much because it's going to make it less reliable. And I'm going to show you just the trigger pull. Of course, it's only double action. So we pull it through. It's hefty, but it's very smooth. But if you want to get really good accuracy between the trigger and these sights, you know, you're going to get decent combat accuracy, but not target accuracy. But guys, I'm telling you, that trigger pull is pretty heavy. We're going to check the trigger pull weight with our Lyman trigger gauge from Brownells. 11 pounds, 7 ounces. And guys, I've done that a number of times. I've had some people to say that it's up to 16 pounds, but it feels like 16 pounds at some point. But because it's so smooth, you can actually get decent hits on target. We're going to be shooting some CCI 22 Magnums. This is 35 grain. It comes in a 200 pack and kind of just opens up, and you're not fighting with the box. But we also have some Federal 40 grain, and we're going to try it out. Now, one of the things about the ammo choices is they are making some self-defense loads. In Hornady Critical Defense, it's the 45 grain XTF round. And when I get some of those in, we're going to try those out. Then there's also the CCI shot shells, which are great for pest control. Here we have the 22 Magnum, here we have the 22 long rifle. Both are rim fire. The diameter of the case on the 22 Magnum is a little thicker, so you don't put that in a standard 22. But these are not interchangeable, and the 22 has much less power. But you can just kind of see the size difference between these two rounds. The real advantage, though, you're going to get with the 22 Magnum over the 22 long rifle is in a little bit of a longer barrel because it allows the powder to really burn. But this will give you a lot more muzzle flash, and it will increase ballistic capability. Now, one of the huge appeals of 22 Magnum or 22 long rifle, again, is just the lack of recoil. I mean, it is so fun to shoot, and you know, and it's fairly inexpensive compared to your centerfire calibers. And so taking this out and shooting it low recoil, low muzzle blast, I'm a big fan of 22, either one, rimfire, because it's just a lot of fun. Now, one of the issues you're going to have with rimfire is it's not quite as reliable as your centerfire. And so it's got to hit the right spot on that rim. Overall, really good primer strikes. They're good intention. That has a lot to do with that trigger pull weight, a lot of spring behind it. We did have one failure to ignite, even though it gave a decent primer strike. So I don't know if that was ammunition or not. But overall, I was very pleased with it. Now, the second part of that is you can just pull the trigger again instead of having to do an immediate action drill that you would have to do with a semi-automatic firearm. So that's also a plus. But shooting it in different positions, even one-handed, which a lot of self-defense situations end up. It's really mild, it's easy to keep them on target. And that's one of the big things about 22 long rifle, even more than 22 Magnum, is that you can keep all the rounds. Shot placement is a lot easier, even in a tough situation with 22 long rifle. Whereas if you go up to 38 or 357 Magnum, you know, they can be a little stout, especially in these small revolvers. And so that's one of the reasons why these have become so popular. And you have 7 rounds instead of the 5 rounds in the Centennial. So it gives you a couple of extra rounds. One of the things about a revolver is having to load it. It does take a little extra time to load the firearm, and so you really want to make sure your shot placement's right. Now, because of the trigger pull, sometimes accuracy is going to suffer somewhat, but the more you shoot it, you'll start to master it. It's one of the things I found out with my Model 442 Centennial. Because of that super light frame, it took me a little time to get really on target. But then once I did, I was on. And so it's one of those things that where you have to work through how the gun shoots, get through the recoil, how the trigger pull is, and that's why it's so vital to make sure you get training and you go out and you shoot often. Now, one thing that I do love about having an internal hammer revolver is that I can slip this in my pocket and actually fire through my pocket without worrying about the hammer getting caught up and hung. That's one of the things about an internal hammer that's really an advantage. The only problem with that is you're going to have to make sure you're very close before you pull that trigger. Now here I have a Colt Cobra, and I just brought that out because it does have the hammer. And this is what you typically see. You know, you can just pull your hammer back and you're able to fire the pistol with a lesser trigger pull. But then you can fire it like this, and of course, you know, with a double action. And that's a lot different than your internal hammer. So if you really want that external hammer, you would go with the Model 351 PD. Also, one of the big advantages of a Smith & Wesson J-frame revolver is there's a ton of different holster options. I mean, you can go from any style because this is one of the most popular Smith & Wesson revolvers is the J-frame. I mean, different grips, of course, different holsters, you know, even different sights and spring kits and parts. I mean, there's just so much that they have to offer. And again, before you go out and buy any kind of firearm, especially for those who have no experience or they have weak hand strength, is to take them out and let them try the trigger. It's very important because a lot of times somebody will look at this and go, oh, that's perfect. It's 22 Magnum, there's not a lot of recoil, and then when they try to pull that trigger, they find out that it is really stiff. And, you know, again, while it's smooth, you're gonna have some issues. So just make sure that you check that out before you buy one. Now when it comes to price, they're considerably more than your standard striker fire pistols. They're more expensive to produce. These run $689 on the Smith & Wesson website. Now typically you can find them for around the $600 range. A little less, maybe a little more. I believe I paid $600 for this one. And so, you know, you've got to take that into consideration. But if you're really wanting a good quality revolver, that's just the price you're going to have to pay. I know a lot of times with the Ruger LCR, they tend to be less expensive, especially their polymer framed double single action revolvers. But one of the big things about the LCR is the trigger pull is a lot less. In fact, when I went to buy this one, that's actually what I was looking for. But I love Smith & Wesson quality. I love my Centennial already. And again, already having the 351 PD, I've done a review on it. I really wanted one of these. And guys, they're just great quality. It's just that the trigger pull, while it's very smooth, it is going to be heavy. So guys, if you're looking for a 22 rimfire revolver, the Smith & Wesson 351 PD is excellent. So lightweight, so easy to carry, and then with the 22 Magnum, the recoil is very mild. And guys, I want to thank my patrons over at Patreon for making this purchase possible. With YouTube demonetizing a lot of our videos, sometimes things get a little tight, and it's great to have Patreon over there supporting us. Rubber Dummies is one of the best training tools on the market, and you get a 10% discount using Suit00 when you click the link down in the description. Be strong, be of good courage. God bless America. Long live the Republic. With a hammer interior. Okay. And so we're gonna, but really you want to, okay. To your centerfire cartridge. It's just very little muzzle flip, very little. 11 pounds, 2 ounces. Yeah, 11 pounds, that is not 11 pounds. The weight on the Model 442, lightweight. Now with a small revolver like that, you don't really have any light options, but one that you could have a one-time light option. Take your O-Light, it's got magnetic tail switch. You'd have one shot, just kidding. Is it super effective? Well, okay, no, I'm not getting into that yet.